What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JBsports back again with another one. The WBA, they staying true to their word about getting rid of all these multiple belts per weight division. Got to give them credit. You know, hopefully boxing will take the cue from the WBA. That means the WBC, WBO, and IBF will take similar measures, man, to have the best fighting the best. You know, let's get rid of all these multiple champions per division. Now, you got the UFC, man, you know, give them credit. Like half of those guys I don't know. Only time I really watch the UFC is when they got the big names fighting. The John Jones, the Conor McGregors, people like that fighting. But Dana White, he ain't paying their fighters enough money. Their fighters ain't making nearby what the fighters make in boxing, but Dana White is making the top fighters fight each other. And that's what boxing needs to do. And a way to do that is to get rid of these multiple belts per division. And I give the WBA credit, man, and they came out with a doozy a couple of hours ago, man, as they basically mandated that super WBA welterweight champion, Stanionis Ugas, fresh off a victory over former 8 division world champion Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao, must face Ugas-Stanionis, and they must fight in the next 119 days. And the winner of that fight must fight the winner of regular WBA welterweight champion Minneapolis, Minnesota's own Jamal James when he takes on Ugas-Butavev. Those two guys must fight each other by November, and the winners must face each other by March of 2022. So that's a good thing. Now this is going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out, man, because this is going to affect the welterweight division as a whole, because a lot of people were believing that Stanionis Ugas was going to end up fighting Manny Pacquiao in a rematch in January of 2022. Now those plans evidently go out the window unless Jamal James is willing to drop that belt, and he might be willing to do that and chase that another huge payday in a rematch with Manny Pacquiao. Maybe he does that, but I think Stanionis Ugas at this stage of his career, the belt holds a lot of value to him. He don't have a big name in the sport of boxing. Now he's got a bigger name than he had before the Pacquiao fight, but he still don't have a big name in the sport of boxing. He still don't have a big enough name where he can say forget the belts. Like Canelo Alvarez could do that right now. He could drop all the 3 of his belts in 168 pounds and still be the face of boxing, the cash cow boxing, and still face and be part of the biggest fights in boxing currently. So he don't need those belts. Those belts don't define Canelo Alvarez. But the belt does define a fighter like Stanionis Ugas. I think he needs that belt, so he might not be so willing to drop the belt. So it remains to be seen. But with that being said, man, I like what the WBA is doing. It's like I said, it's going to not only affect a potential rematch with Manny Pacquiao. Maybe Pacquiao wasn't going to take the rematch. I know his wife is urging him strongly to retire. I know his trainer, Bullboy Fernandez, is urging him to take on a lesser opponent in a farewell fight in the Philippines, maybe a Victor Ortiz or a Robert Guerrero, fighter of that caliber. So it remains to be seen what's going to be his next move, but the WBA has laid down the mandate, man, that these 2 fights must happen, and the winners must meet by March of 2022. Let me go over it again. You got Stanionis Ugas versus Ugas-Stanionis for Ugas Super WBA welterweight title. That fight must take place in the next 119 days. And then we have the regular WBA welterweight champion. They're going to get rid of that belt. That's what they're doing. They're getting rid of these belts. There ain't going to be no more WBA regular, no regular WBA welterweight champion. This is going to be one belt. That's going to be the WBA welterweight champion. So basically that regular is going to fall by the wayside. But as we stand right now, the regular WBA welterweight champion, Jamal James, will take on the guy that's ranked the highest in the WBA, that's a non-champion. That is Ugas-Butavev. that fight must take place by November. We're here in October now, so that fight has got less time to take place than Ugas. I think they give Ugas more time because he's fresh off a fight with Manny Pacquiao. Jamal James hasn't fought since he fought Thomas Delerme. That fight was last year, so the WBA is putting pressure on him to make that fight happen ASAP. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. A lot of people, this thing affects that you're probably not thinking about. Like Keith one-time Thurman. One time, he was prominently linked to a matchup with Yordenis Ugas before Ugas landed the Pacquiao fight. Ugas was supposed to fight Fabian Maidana. As we know, Errol Spence Jr. had to pull out of that fight due to an eye injury, and then Ugas stepped into his place. But before all that, Ugas was said to be maybe in negotiations to fight former unified welterweight champion Keith one-time Thurman. Now this takes basically four fighters out of the mix for a potential opponent for Keith one-time Thurman. This takes 4 pieces off the chessboard, so to speak. So guys like Keith one-time Thurman who don't have a fight lined up, has just got their options limited. Former 8-time world champion and Filipino icon and surefire Hall of Fame fighter Manny Pacquiao options have been lessened as the Ugas fight looks like it might not come to fruition, or whether Ugas rematch looks like it might not come to fruition. And maybe Pacquiao, maybe he does retire. Maybe that's pretty much what he was going to do anyway. But if he does indeed want to fight again, he might have to look at another opponent besides trying to exact revenge on Yordenis Ugas. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But that's the breaking news. That basically we got a WBA welterweight tournament. Kind of remind me of the old days, back in the not even the old days, but back in the early 90s. Not even the early 90s, like the late early 2001 when they had that middleweight tournament. Remember Bernard Hopkins, he fought somebody, and Felix Trinidad fought William Joppy, and Felix Trinidad destroyed William Joppy. That was the first time because remember they were talking about Trinidad fighting Roy Jones Jr. I was like, man, Roy Jones Jr. would annihilate Trinidad. Trinidad too goddamn slow and too basics, too straight up and down, with no special effects. He would get destroyed by Roy Jones. But when he destroyed William Joppy, that was the first time I was like, nah, that ain't no joke fight. That's a real fight. That's a good fight. Make that fight happen. But he destroyed William Joppy, and then Bernard Hopkins beat, I forgot the guy he fought. He fought some guy, and he won that fight, but he didn't win as impressively as Felix Trinidad. And then Trinidad fought Bernard Hopkins. And everybody was assuming that Trinidad was going to beat Hopkins, and then that was going to set the stage for Felix Trinidad versus Roy Jones Jr. But what happened was Bernard Hopkins upset the apple cart and defeated Felix Trinidad in a dominating fashion, stopped Felix Trinidad. And then Roy Jones, who was going to give Felix Trinidad 50-50, told Bernard Hopkins, now 60-40, I already beat you. You ain't nowhere in the world you can get no 50-50 with me. We fought up in the old JFK Stadium, home of the Washington Redskins at that time, and I beat you there. So if we fight again, it's gonna be 60-40. Yeah, he told Bernard Hopkins in the dressing room after he beat somebody, and Bernard Hopkins was Roy Jones was in the dressing room about to get ready to fight, and Bernard Hopkins had just got through winning his fight. I think over I don't think that was right after the Trinidad fight. I think Hopkins was probably at another fight. And they called him into the ring, and he talked to Roy Jones. They was talking to each other. That basically was a Zoom back then when there really wasn't no Zoom. They talked via Zoom. Roy was in his dressing room in a whole nother state, and Hopkins was in the ring with Jim Lampley, I think. Not Jim Lampley, but Larry Merchant. And Roy Jones told him 60-40, and you get your ass whooped, Bernard. Bernard was like, nah, I just won the middleweight tournament. And I'm the top dog in the middleweight division, 50-50. And the fight never came to fruition at that time when both guys were at the top of their game. They fought years later when both was out of their prime, and Roy Jones lost to Bernard Hopkins. But nobody even remember that fight, man. That fight was way past its expiration date, as it should have happened years before. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Let me know your thoughts about this WBA welterweight tournament, and let me know your thoughts about Jake Paul being the face of boxing. And this, in my opinion, is making boxing have to clean up his act and start making these fights, start making these matchups and start eliminating all these belts per division. Let me know your thoughts and subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend, and I holla.